Hello and welcome to the show. This week's Tuner Thursday we start with not a Ferrari, we have a Honda NSX. Now I have quite a history with the NSX. On Forza 4 my A-Class car of choice was an NSX. On Forza Horizon 2 I have an incredibly fast NSX as well. On Forza 5 my A-Class vehicle tends to be a Lancia 037 now, but I do like the NSXs. They are very, very good cars to drive. I don't think it's possible to not like the NSX. They are a very, very good car at what they do, and I was expecting this to put up a pretty good show. I've never quite got a build sorted myself, but yeah, I was expecting the NSX to be a pretty decent car when it came to this challenge. As far as statistics go, 514 horsepower in this car, 357 torque, not quite as much torque as some of the vehicles that we have been seeing. The power is around average. It's not very often you say 500 plus horsepower is average. However, the weight is nice and light, 2,457 pounds, making it one of the lighter cars we've had in the last few weeks. A decent power to weight ratio in this vehicle, and it is certainly one of the quicker cars we have had in a straight line. Down this start-finish straight, we're seeing about 165 miles an hour out of the NSX before jumping on the brakes. The acceleration out of the corners is very, very good with this car. It's very, very fast. I mean, 160 is about what we're seeing most of the time down this start-finish straight, maybe a little bit slower, sort of as an average. 160 is a pretty tough speed to get to, and this is doing 165, and then you jump on the brakes and you still slow down for turn one. It is a quick car. Admittedly, because this thing is so very fast in a straight line, you are braking earlier than some of the other cars. It is 5-6 miles an hour faster than most of the vehicles here. So yeah, you've got to brake a little bit earlier, but the brakes aren't too bad. When it comes to the actual handling, I'm not a huge fan of the handling on this. You can carry a lot of quarter speed, don't get me wrong, you can carry an awful lot of quarter speed when you get things wrong. However, there's kind of a combination of understeer and oversteer. You get understeer on turning, which is fine. That's how I like a car to drive. However, you don't get the plantedness from this car. The minute you try and get on the throttle a little bit too soon, the back end will want to step out, and as you will see here in these clips, I was having quite a few problems, and you'll see all the scrapes down the side of the car. I bumped the wall a few times. It's all in the same place near enough as well. Just trying to get on the power that little bit too soon, and the NSX doesn't like it. I was surprised that it was quite as oversteery, quite as slidey as it was. Yeah, I wouldn't think that from the NSX. I mean, turning is fine. It gets a little bit of understeer, then it just wants to let go when you start to really, really push the car. But you do have to be really pushing the damn thing to get it. Again, with sliding out of the roundabout. If you try and get on the throttle a little bit too soon, here you'll slide. That was the wall that I was bumping quite a few times. Just trying to get on the power as soon as possible. Again, your cars will slide out of that turn there. The NSX it felt very, very quick, if a little bit difficult to drive at times. But yeah, still, the acceleration in this car was just incredible. We move on next to a Subaru Impreza from his Johnny 84. Another powerful car, this one, 550 horsepower, with a lot more torque though, 549. It is at the heavier end of things, 2,800 pounds. Again, decent power, decent torque, a little bit heavier than the NSX, but it's still pretty good all around. I mean, they're fairly average figures, again, that we're seeing for maybe a little bit higher than average torque. But yeah, still decent figures from this car. Unlike the NSX, the Subaru is four-wheel drive, and that means that it is much easier to drive. This was much going from the NSX it was a bit of a handful, sort of a car that you had to wrestle around the track, and then you go into this that was lovely and easy. I didn't really have any problems with this car. It would drive very, very nicely around the track. When really, really pushed hard again, you get it to slide a little bit. And being four-wheel drive, a lot of the four-wheel drive cars we've had here, you've seen that, you know, when you really are a moron with the throttle, it will slide around the small bits. As again, I do exactly the same thing, just a little bump off the wall. Again, in this next corner, the track falls away from you on the outside. That's why you see a lot of cars sliding through there. If you run a little wide on the exit, you will just put a wheel where the track starts falling away. That's more than enough to get these cars to start going sideways. The Subaru was a very, very nice car to drive around here. Brakes were also very good on this vehicle. You could brake probably 50 metres later than most of the other cars that I've driven when you see in here, rather than the 300 metre board that you were the 400 metre board that you were braking with a lot of the cars here. This would brake at around the 300 metre board. Straight line speed, not quite as impressive. It's not quite as quick as the NSX, but it's still getting up towards the 160 mile an hour mark, which is still pretty damn quick down this front straight-line course. Because it's four-wheel drive, you're not waiting to get on the power out of the turns. You can just floor it. And on the most part, the Subaru sorts itself out. No problem with understeer around the first very long corner. And again, under braking into this first big braking zone, it was around the sort of 450 metre-ish mark. You were jumping on the brakes, which is pretty damn good for a car that is this quick. I mean, maybe not quite as good on the brakes as the ACR Viper. The ACR Viper was ridiculously good. Considering the Viper was, I think, about £3,000, this car is £200 lighter. The Viper could brake later than almost everything despite going at the same speed as it. I don't know how the Viper has such good brakes, but this Subaru was not far off. It certainly reminded me quite a bit of the Viper when it came to the braking. Yeah, I liked the Subaru. I really did. It was a very easy car to get quick lap times out of it. Had to be a little bit careful of the curbs, although that is general warning for all vehicles. You have to be a little bit careful of the curbs. There were a couple of times I had the Subaru a long way on two wheels. This corner in particular, I got the Subaru a long way on two wheels. Other downside that you won't see from the replay cameras is the pillar by the driver's door is the worst positioned pillar imaginable. When you come into right-hand corners, there's a couple of places you just cannot see the corner to turn in. The pillar just blocks the entire part of the track you want to be looking at. That is very, very annoying. Most people may not have a problem with this if you don't drive cockpit view. But it was a really irritating thing. Again, there were a few times where I could completely miss the apex, either sort of cutting the corner or turning in far too late, and I just couldn't see a thing. Yeah, very, very irritating on that one. And next vehicle from the real Emil is an unlikely one. Didn't expect to see a Peugeot 308 in this series, I will be honest. Certainly an interesting choice of car. I'm not a fan. I like the classic Peugeots, I like the 205 GTI very much. Fantastic car. I like the Peugeot 208 GTI. I would love to see that in a future Forza game. I think it's a fantastic car. This one is not a fantastic car, and I had some problems with it, as you see here. The brakes are not good. The brakes are really not good on this car. I did that a few times with this, trying to get it stopped. I think on the first couple of laps I completely had to use the escape road on the first big braking zone because it doesn't stop very well. The problem is it weighs a lot, 3,100 pounds in this car, making it one of the heaviest vehicles that we've had in this series. I know maybe compared to normal everyday cars, 3,100 isn't a huge amount, but when we're talking about sports cars racing around a tight and twisty track, that's quite a lot of weight, and the Peugeot does not get stopped very well in the braking zones. However, it is the most powerful car we have here today. 586 horsepower from this car. That's one of the more powerful vehicles we've had, full stop. I think only a couple of cars have been more powerful. Ferrari Testarossa, the ACR Viper. It is probably in the top 5 most powerful cars in this series. Again, not what I expected to say about the Peugeot. It has the 3.7 litre V6. I'm not sure if it was bored out or not, but it's got the V6 in it. It's been converted to four-wheel drive, thank God. I wouldn't want to try and put all that power through the front wheels, so it does manage the power okay. Torque-wise, 412, it's not too bad. Sort of power and torque figures on this car are fairly impressive, but I'm guessing the compromise was that it didn't have full weight reduction. I'm not sure if it had any weight reduction on it, because that is quite a lot of weight, and it does feel heavy, certainly through the corners. As far as power delivery goes, of course, with the four-wheel drive system it is easier. The Peugeot was perhaps a little bit more inclined to sliding than the Subaru. Admittedly, it does have a few more horsepower, but yeah, the Peugeot was not quite as balanced, not quite as nice to get through the turns as the Subaru was, and then we came to a braking zone. I mean, you can see around turn 1 I was having more problems with the Peugeot. The back end was wanting to step out. It didn't ever get really very sideways. It wasn't sort of a drift car sideways around the corners, but it was just enough to be a little bit uncomfortable from time to time. is one of the more interesting cars, shall we say, that I've had going through Turn 1. Normally the four-wheel drive cars through that corner will understeer off towards the wall. Had a few cars that have been trying to do that, but no, this one, the back end would want to come out. There were a few scary moments. It wasn't the worst car I've had to drive, certainly, and if you were almost calm with it, if you made sure you braked nice and early for the corners, if you got it stopped, then things weren't too bad. But the minute you tried to push on the brakes, the minute you tried to brake that little bit later, that's when you had some real issues with the Peugeot. But it's good to see something different. Good to see something different taking on the challenge. It's certainly never expected to see a 308. That time I managed to make it stop for that corner. And our final vehicle for the day from That's So Hagen is the Volkswagen Scirocco. I like the Scirocco. It's a lovely car, this. I like the body kit that you can put on it. It's like the Scirocco R race car. Is it a single make series that they run these in? I think it could be. Anyway, the body kit looks very, very cool on this car. Again, this is another front-wheel drive car that's been converted to four-wheel drive. It doesn't have as much power as the Peugeot, though. 413 horsepower, neither does it has the torque, 383. And it's still quite heavy, 2,939 pounds. And that's not the greatest power-to-weight ratio. Only 413 horsepower in a car that weighs this much. That's not so good. That's not so good. I don't quite know why the sort of like this is the top of A class. This is maximum PI you can get it in A class, and it's an awful lot of power down on sort of the cars around me. It's 100 horsepower less than most of the vehicles we're seeing, and it's one of the heavier cars that we're seeing as well. And it doesn't really make up with it with grip through the corners. Yes, it is quite a nice car through the turns. It has decent cornering speed. I had no major issues. Again, a little bit like the Peugeot and the Subaru for that matter. It would slide when pushed really hard. It wasn't as oversteery though as the Peugeot. It wasn't as difficult. Actually, it was quite good on the brakes. Again, similar sort of braking points we were getting out of this as we were in the Subaru. The problem was we had no straight line speed. I say no straight line speed, but we were 20 miles an hour slower than the likes of the Subaru. I think it was about 144, 145. We were topping out at down this front straight, and it's just not got the acceleration out the corners, much like we saw with the Lamborghini Gallardo when I ran that a couple of weeks ago. Gallardo was a lovely car to drive. However, it had, I think it was about 500 and something horsepower, but weighed so much that the acceleration down the straights, out of each corner, down the shorter straights around here, it really struggled on, and that was the Scirocco's problem. Again, it was another car that when driving it, it felt quick, it felt like a good car to drive, but just the acceleration in between these corners really hampered it. It's just too heavy. It's just too, I get a very, very big slide out of that turn. Again, you're clipping the curbs, the car's going to be throwing around. I was pushing my luck a little bit there, again, trying to go faster and faster with the car. It's not too bad though, the Scirocco, I have to say, for running the curbs. I didn't have too many. I wasn't putting this on two wheels like I was with the Subaru in its first couple of laps. I didn't have it on two wheels. Yeah, I had occasional moments of chucking it sideways. And again, yeah, trying to put down all of the power out of the corners, you would get it sliding a little bit from time to time. It's just the weight that does this car in. Braking was good. I was surprised actually, considering. Again, it's one of the heavier cars. It was pretty damn good under braking. It did get slowed down quite well. I also did have some troubles with this final hairpin. I tried all sorts of lines to get the car to turn in to that final hairpin. It didn't really like it though. The rest of the track, as I said, didn't have any problems. It did not like getting turned in for the final corner. I found myself losing, or that was kind of the corner that made or braked a lap. Broke a lap? Not braked a lap, that's better English. Yeah, the final corner was very, very important in the Scirocco, making sure you got the car turned in, because it was a little bit of a fight. I'm not sure why on that one either, as I get it very sideways, very nearly clip the wall. Anyway, on to the times, and it is all change at the top of the leaderboard. The Honda NSX goes fastest with a 1:23.9. 22.296. That is a very quick lap time, and I have no doubt, given a lot more laps, I could get that into the 22s. I'm pretty sure if you put all my fastest sectors together, I would have got it into the 22s. Every time you were pushing the car more and more, it just wanted to slide, and then you'd end up losing time. Yeah, the Honda is fast. That is a seriously... I wondered if anything would beat the F50, but the NSX goes almost 0.4 of a second quicker. Yeah, I like the NSX. That was a very, very nice car to drive. And the Impreza also sets a very fast time, a 124.093, making it now 3 Japanese cars in the top 4. The Ferrari domination is well and truly over. We have to go a little bit further down to find the other 2 vehicles. The Scirocco, I compared it to the Gallardo, it sets a very similar time to the Lamborghini, a 126.420. Just underpowered and too heavy, much like the Lamborghini. The Peugeot is not far behind the Lamborghini. Again, not a sentence I expected to say. The Peugeot sets a 126.507. While it did have enough power and enough straight line speed, I think it was topping out about 155 into the first corner, it was quite difficult to get it slowed down from them speeds, and not quite the nicest car when it came to going through the corners. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. Entries for this Tuner Thursday competition are now closed. If you have entered a car, please make sure it is actually uploaded on your storefront. I've going through doing these the last couple of weeks and cars aren't there, so please make sure your car is on the storefront. There will come a time when I just give up waiting for you to put it on there, but we are not accepting any more entries into this series. We're probably going to do 4, maybe even get up to 5 cars an episode as I try and get through these. However, that is it for today, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.